Welcome to J Lowe Artist. Today we're going to be doing linear perspective. Once you understand it, it's quite liberating and you can be very, very creative with it. Create some wonderful depth, some wonderful images with linear perspective. And if you understand linear perspective and value and how they go together to create depth and form, it's a wonderful thing. Really appreciate you being here. Appreciate you drawing along with me. Let's try some linear perspective. Thanks for being here today and drawing with me though. As we do linear perspective, this is going to be 1-point linear perspective. And as we go, I'm going to just tell you a little story. We're out in the West Desert, standing out there in the West Desert, and along comes a fuzzy little bunny. So here's my fuzzy little bunny. All right, he looks like a puppy. So we'll give him a little fuzzy bunny. So along comes the fuzzy little bunny. And at first I think, oh, how cute. I want to go up and pet him. But then I start noticing something strange about my fuzzy bunny. First of all, my fuzzy bunny has horns. And the fuzzy bunny no longer is happy looking. He's kind of mean looking. And he has fangs. So now all of a sudden I'm like, oh no! What is that? The great North American evil jackalope. And out in Hooper, they're really bad. So if you live out that way, beware of those jackalopes because they'll bite your ankles. So we want to keep those evil jackalopes away from our area. So we want to build a fence. So the first thing we have to know is, first of all, we have our eye level line and we have our horizon line, which here in the West, it kind of looks like this. And now we get to choose a vanishing point. I'm going to put my vanishing point way over here, right above the jackalope somewhere. That's my vanishing point. And if you don't remember what that's called, label it VP or vanishing point or whatever. But you need to know that because from here on out, anytime you do linear perspective, you have at least one vanishing point. Now, the more you get into it, the more you understand that objects don't have just one vanishing point. Most objects have 2 or 3 or 4 vanishing points. But we're going to try to keep it simple. We're just going to have one. Now, we're going to build a fence. So we need our first fence post. So over here on the right somewhere, and I'm going to level this with my edge of my paper. So I want it to be very, very vertical. I'm going to make this big tall fence. Here's my first fence post. And I'm going to put that little fence post in the ground. You know it's in the ground because grass will start to grow around your fence post. There's my grass. There's my first fence post. And my jackalope laughs. Ha ha ha. That will never keep me out. So now we have to put in more posts. We have to know how high to make that, and since we put in one post and we've got it, what, about 12 feet high there? Jackalopes can jump 11 feet, so we have to have it just slightly above what they can jump. And so what I do is I go from the top of my post to my vanishing point, and that's how high my posts need to be. Well, since we're out in the West Desert, it's very flat and level. So we need to know the bottom and we need to know where to put those posts so that they all line up. So now we have the top and the bottom. We know where to put those. Everybody knows that when you're building a fence, in order to make that fence strong, number one, it has to be very, very vertical. And number two, each post has to be the same distance away from each other. So the first post we put in there, it's not really important where it is, but it will dictate where all the other posts go. So all I do is I say, well, I see my first post. My first post is right here. Now I'm going to put in my second post. I'm just going to come over here until it looks about right. About right there, maybe. I don't want to go too close to it. I don't want to be too far away. So somewhere in there, it's a happy middle. I'm going to line that up with my ruler, make sure that these are parallel and that they're very vertical. When you're doing linear perspective, there's optical illusions that happen, and you're going to want to start doing this. You want to start turning your ruler. Don't do it. Fight against that urge. Line up the edge of your ruler with your paper. Make sure it's very vertical. And there's my second post. I dig a hole and put it in the ground. There's some grass growing around that pole. So now I have my first post and I have my second post. And I'm going to label those posts. I'm going to say this is post A and this is post B. Okay, so we have post A and we have post B. Now, how do you find the center of a rectangle? Let's say I have a square here, or a rectangle. How do you find the center? Very good. A diagonal line, right? So you go from corner to corner. Charlie was going to say that, weren't you? Corner to corner. And you just draw a little line. This is called a diagonal line. By the way, the term diagonal means to cut in half. Di meaning two. Agonal means, at an angle. So these are diagonal. Orthogonal means at an angle, but it goes to the vanishing point. So now I found the center of my rectangle, right? Now, this is kind of interesting. If I wanted to find an exact duplicate of this, and I knew where my bottom line was, and I knew where my top line was, and I knew where my center was, all I have to do is go from one edge through the center, where it comes down here, that would tell me where my next line goes, right? So if it works like this, if it works flat, it's going to work if it's in perspective. Are you following me? Are you with me there so far? So how do we find the center then of this rectangle? Okay, Logan says if you go from the top of B through the bottom of A, and the top of A through the bottom of B, you make a little line there, that little X tells me where my center is. Notice that there's more distance between the center here and A as there is between the center and B. It's because as things get farther away from you, they get smaller. Objects get smaller, but the spaces in between get smaller as well. So now that we have our center, we've figured that out. You all drew this, right? Go from your center to your vanishing point, and that tells you where the middle of our fence is going to be, or the middle of our posts. So this is the middle of this post. It's going to be the same distance from here to there as it is from here to there. Okay? And again, if it worked like this, it's going to work like this. You go from the top of A through the center, not through your eye level line. Don't worry about the eye level line. You just ignore that eye level line right now. Top of A through the center of B, and I'm using my front edge of my posts here. Top of A through the center of B. Where it hits down here, just make a little mark, and that's where you would dig your hole and put your next post. Okay, so you go from the top of A through the middle of B, and where it hits down here, just make a little mark, and that's where you put your next post. And if you're making them thicker, just make it a little bit thinner than the last one. Each post is going to get thinner as it goes because they get smaller. And grass is growing around that one too. Everybody good so far? We're going to call this post C. Okay, so if you go from A through the center of B to get C, how do you get D? Yeah, same thing. Go from B through C, and that tells you where to get D. So when it comes down, put a little mark there, and that's where your post goes. If you've got these see-through rulers, line up your posts so that they're parallel each other. Nobody wants a leaning fence post. A little grass in there. Now, continue to do that. Find all these. You're going to get to a point, and I would guess somewhere in this area here, that they're going to be so close together you can't even measure them. So let's try it. You go C through D. Dig a hole. In your fence. D through E. You don't have to draw these lines if you don't want to. I mean, if you're drawing something, you have to erase those lines. Don't draw them in. As long as you understand it, you're good. You just keep doing that through the center. Ignore the eye level line. That doesn't matter right now. Now, if you don't do it right, you'll know it. You'll look at it and you go, something's wonky, something's off. This is very scientific. There's only one way to do it. And don't hide behind that creativity thing. I'm just being creative. No, you're doing it wrong. What you do with it can be very creative, but okay. So once you get to that point where they're so darn close together that you can't even measure them anymore, then you just kind of do this: lines, 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 and after a while, those little lines are going to get so close together that they're going to kind of disappear. We have this thing called atmospheric perspective, and that states that air, moisture in the air, hits the light, it confuses or reflects off of that air, the light does, and you can't see your objects as easily or as well. They get lighter, hazier, fuzzier, bluer, as they recede into space. So once you get to that point and you can't measure anymore, they just become a haze of line. So now our little bunny, or our little jackalope is amazed. He's like, "Whoa! You guys made this fence." And you can make it even worse by plugging it in. I'm going to just put this little plug right here. I'm going to do a little rectangle that goes toward my vanishing point. And plug it in. Ta-dum, ta-dum. Now we have an electric fence. Ha-ha. That'll keep out those little jackalopes. Where could you use this concept besides a fence? Let's say, for example, that these were a little wider. Could you make it into a stairway? So, yeah, there's a stairway to heaven. What about lights down a hallway and you're looking up? Yeah. What about bookshelves? If you wanted to go inside of this, all you have to do is just do a horizontal line or horizontal edge like this, and then all of a sudden that looks like a door that just opened up. Or you can go inside of it like that. And if it's in a floor, all of a sudden that's a pit. Or if it's in the top, it's going up somewhere. Bookshelves, trees along the side of a of a road are evenly spaced. That makes it more aesthetically pleasing. So you can do trees or arches. You know, if you did archways along there, you could do little arches. Telephone poles, fences, windows in a building, doors. You know, this concept can be used in lots and lots of different places. Thanks for coming along on this journey. Thanks for doing linear perspective with me. Have a lovely day. And remember, art makes life better.